So hiring your first few employees, it is so tough. You got to do it right. It's got to work. They've got to stick with you. You oftentimes don't have enough money to be able to pay them well, and you want to pay them well because you want somebody good, but at the same time you can't really afford to do it. And you're constantly caught in this how do I do this stage. So I've thought a lot about this. I've had a lot of experience hiring people at that stage, and I want to share a few mindsets with you. So I'm not going to share where to go get them. I'm not going to share the type of person to hire or anything like that. What I really want to focus on is a couple of your mindset things that will help you in the process of making these decisions. So the first one is this. You're going to have to invest to get a good employee. Now, a lot of people, they hear that and they go, I can't do that, because basically there's two kinds of investments you're going to have to make to do this. First off, you're either going to have to pay money, like a lot of money, to acquire an expert, which probably means that, especially right at first, that you're going to get paid less because you're hiring an expert, or you're going to have to pay a lot of time if you want to pay less money. So you can bring in somebody who's not yet an expert in what it is that you want to have done, but then you're going to have to spend a lot of time training them on how to do that thing you want to have done so that they can do that at the level of the expert that you would have had to pay a lot of money to acquire. And you need to realize that there really is that bit of a trade-off. If you really, really want somebody who's an expert in online marketing, it's going to cost you more than picking up a brand new college student or somebody who's just a really good person that doesn't understand how to do that yet and training them how to do it. But the key thing is this. What I just told you is fairly obvious. The part that's less than obvious is that either way, you're going to have to invest time. So it's very, very rare that you can hire somebody, bring them in, spend an hour or two talking to them, and then expect them to go do a job at the level that you want that job to be done, unless that job is flipping hamburgers or something like that. If you have an incredibly low skill required job that you could literally train them to do it in an hour or two, then what I'm talking about doesn't really apply. But if you want somebody to help you with marketing, to help you with product creation, to help you with social media, to help you with so many of the kinds of things that I bet you're possibly looking for someone to do, then you're going to have to spend a lot of time training them how to do it. So there's a phrase that we use a lot in this industry called this: hire for character, not skills. And you can replace that word character with fit, with enthusiasm, with entrepreneurial kind of attitudes, not skills. And by the way, there is something really important here that you need to recognize. A lot of people want to hire themselves. They want somebody who's as devoted to the business as they are, who is willing to put in blood, sweat, and tears to make that happen. And it really ticks them off when, hey, it's 5 o'clock, I got to go home. And it's like, well, wait a minute, the job's not done. We got a lunch in the morning. I need you to stay. And it's like, I'm sorry, it's 5 o'clock. I got hungry kids at home. I got to go home. And we need to recognize that entrepreneurs don't work for entrepreneurs. They may for a short period of time to get a little bit of experience so they can go off and start their own entrepreneurship, but you can't handcuff an entrepreneur. A couple of years ago, I met a young woman at a conference, and then I met her boss. And I could see immediately the power of this young woman and what she was going to do in the world. And I started talking to her about that, and the boss came to me and just railed on me. I mean, she yelled at me. How dare you talk and put these dreams of the future into this employee of mine that is here? Because you're encouraging her to be an entrepreneur and to do those entrepreneurial kinds of things. And I just sort of turned to her and said, she's an entrepreneur. You cannot handcuff her into the job. I know you're going to lose her. The only question is when and how long are you going to try to hold her in that position? So it's important that you recognize that you need to train people to get the skills that they need. So often, and I am totally guilty of this, I've hired somebody, they've worked for me for a while, and then I've ended up having to let them go. And I've let them go not because they didn't do a good job, but on hindsight, I had to let them go because I didn't do a good job of training them how to do what I needed them to do. And so then they didn't fit, and so I let them go. Where in reality, when it really comes down to it, they did the best job they could. I failed because I did not train them on how to do it. I know one person who says, I don't expect anyone to make a single contribution to my business for 6 months. I'm going to spend that time training them and getting them ready. And initially, he spends time just letting them be in the company and figure out what it is that they want to do for a couple of months. Most of us can't afford to do that. But it's important to recognize that it's pretty rare to immediately get a highly productive person because of this question. But what if you don't have the time? What if I really can't spend time to do the training that Don, you just talked about? Well, then you need to expect to pay a lot, to pay a premium for that person. Because if you're expecting them to come in and know how to create a squeeze page, to create an offer, to build out an entire funnel, to maybe even have the skills to go in and design that page, to write that copy and all that. That's not the kind of thing they teach in high school, college, or anywhere. That's the kind of thing you have to learn by actually doing it. Now, they may have worked for somebody else where they've done that for them. Then they're coming as an expert and you're hiring an expert. And so you need to expect to pay them an expert salary because they are one. And realize that if you decide to go that route, I haven't got time, so I'm going to pay a premium to get somebody, make sure they really, truly have that expertise, that they're not just lying to you. And then expect that when they come in, that they are going to make changes. They're not going to just fall into your system and do whatever it is that you tell them to do. They're coming in as an expert, which means by definition, they know stuff, which means by definition, they're going to see the holes that you have in your business right now, and they're going to want to fix them, which means they're going to want to make changes, which means that you're going to disagree with them, because they're trying to change the things that you have created. And sometimes you're going to get into the not invented here syndrome, and you're going to say, but this is the way we've always done it, and it's always worked. And so you're going to push back on them when they try to make those changes, and that will probably hurt you. And I have seen many, many instances where someone has come in as an expert and they tried to make changes and it ends up, quote, not working out because we're constantly butting heads with each other. Where in reality, if you would just soften your heart and listen to them, many of their changes actually make sense. And the problem really is yours, not theirs. Here's another piece. There's a lot of things being said right now about hiring integrators because of a book that's out there that talks about hiring integrators. One of the things that I have discovered for many people who have small businesses, who this first hire is so key for them, is that they probably should not be actually going out and having a job description for an integrator or a chief operating officer or a chief marketing officer or something like that. Many of them should probably be hiring people for the position 3 levels below the one that you eventually want them to be in. So you're not hiring them as the chief operating officer. You're hiring them to be project manager or something like that. So 2 or 3 levels below that they then work up into. The beauty of that is that they then get trained into your system and your culture, and you develop and assess the fit before you ascend them in pay and responsibility to that integrator level. So a person at that level has certain skills, has certain ways of looking at things, certain ways of doing things. You can hire for that and put them in at a position below, 3 levels below. In fact, ideally, you hire 3 people 3 levels below the position you eventually want to fill, and 2 of those are going to end up probably dropping out, and one of them is going to rise into that position. So that's the way big companies do it. They hire a bunch of junior salespeople knowing that 1 or 2 or 10 of those junior salespeople are going to become $1 million salespeople as time goes on. And then they build the training system to nurture and train and help them get there. So hiring 3 levels below, and then again, training and promoting them over time into that position that you want. There's one more element when it comes to this time versus money element that we need to talk about, which is this. If you want and expect instant results, it's probably going to cost you more money, as you're going to have to hire somebody with expertise. If you look at it from a long run and you don't expect instant results, that will oftentimes give you the best employee that you really want. As I work with people and talk with people over time, what I consistently find is that the person that's in their chief operating officer, the person that's their integrator, the person that's sitting at the top of their company, the person that maybe is even the president of their company, is oftentimes the person who started a number of years ago, down lower, and then grew and were trained into that position, and so eventually are now at that position. The beauty of that is, especially if this is one of your first initial hires, is that they helped create the culture. They're now looking to hire more people to fit into that culture, as opposed to they're fighting against the culture that you already have. So I invite you to think about these. These things are mindset things. They're, very frankly, reality things. These are things that everyone who seriously hires has to deal with. Now, by the way, I'm just going to step back for just one moment. You don't have to hire an expert and pay them a lot of money. You can bring in a consultant or an agency to do, or a virtual assistant to do a job for a short period of time, realizing you're paying a premium for expertise to get such and such a thing done, and then they're no longer working for you. So, for example, if you really want an amazing webinar, you might hire a webinar expert to create that amazing webinar for you. And then they walk away and you don't continue paying their premium salary. If you want somebody to build a funnel for you, you hire a funnel expert, they build that funnel, and then they walk away. Yes, that's going to cost you a lot of money, but it's cheaper than hiring a funnel expert full-time over time. And the other beautiful thing about doing something about the way I just talked about is you hire that expert, you pay them the premium, they establish an asset, a product, And then you go use that asset, start bringing in more money, and then you can afford to start bringing in the additional employees underneath. A good pair of friends of mine did exactly that this last year. They started off sort of like the two of them and maybe an assistant under them. Then we created several amazing launches, and now they've brought in a team of like 5 people that they're using to build out the entire business, and they're stepping back from some of the things that they have done. All right? So, some things to think about, some mindset elements that I invite you to consider as you're trying to make decisions about who to hire, where to hire, those kinds of things. I'm sure you've got questions because I didn't talk a lot about the practicalities. I didn't talk about where to find employees. I didn't talk about how to determine how much to pay them, how to interview them, all those kinds of things. Let me know your questions about those areas in the chat, and I'll put those on the list to talk about at some point in the future. And let me know your experience with hiring employees. How many times have you found the things that I just talked about to be true or false? Love to hear your experience. This is Don Crowther saying, just go do this stuff.